You got a log here, a stump here, there's a dock around this corner, there's an island over here, and there's a bunch of pads on the back side here. There's an overhanging tree right about here. So my first approach when I come to a spot like this, I know 9 times out of 10, the fish are going to be on the face of this wall looking to ambush. So I come in from this side. My first cast is going to be directly across. And I know that bringing it across that whole face, I basically have my biggest strike zone because I know the fish from this corner all the way to this corner, and I'm bringing it across 2 pieces of structure. You've got the tree here that's in the water, and you've got the stump here. And this is the spot where I've been, just cracking out smallmouth left and right pre-spawn, where those fish were just up there gorging on trout. And there's mornings, as Tori and I call it, feeding frenzies, where you'll be up there, and out of nowhere, you'll just start seeing, basically, when you see down in the Gulf of Mexico where the fish are just busting bait fish. You see all of a sudden all these little baby trout jumping out of the water against the wall, and you just see big old smallmouth coming up and just railing on them. So if I don't get bit coming across this way, my next move is I'm going to come across out here, and I'm going to throw back towards this corner. I'm going to cover that corner. If I don't get bit there, I'm going to come back over here and throw opposite this way. And there's one morning, the first hud fish I caught this year, we came around this way, didn't get bit, came over this way. My buddy caught a 4.5 out here. We go back down here, we come back out, I make the same cast, and I caught a 5.2. So when the fish are stacked up like that, they're competing for food. And that's when they're choking it, that's when you know that you're onto a hud bite. And at that point, it's the most addicting thing known to man, and you can never put the thing down.
So much for sex.
So in terms of, that's how I approach a point, or, a concrete wall. Points are the same thing. You have basically, because the deepest points on a wall like this are going to be the corners. And that's where, just as recently as a couple days ago, Tori and I were out on Lake Sawyer, and we kept getting bit right off this one corner. The only spot we could get bit on the wall. And it was just every angle you come, either we hit it, coming here, bringing it back out, or then coming around this way and paralleling it. And for whatever reason, those fish are just keying in, because I think it's the deepest water access they have. Those fish only come up. We've sat on this point for 45 minutes and just watched, and every 10 minutes those fish will cycle through. You'll have different pods of fish moving up and back down to feed, and then they go back down deep to do whatever they're doing before they spawn. So basically it's a timing deal. The low light conditions help you tremendously because it's a lot more natural. The fish don't see you. You don't see the fish a lot of times. You don't get antsy and jumpy when you see them. If the sun comes out, the thing with this point is there's a lot of trees right here, so you get shade still. Shade lines are your best friend when swim baiting. When it comes to docks, overhanging trees, you see bass, they love sitting under docks when it's sunny out. Same thing goes with swim baits. If you can find, if it's sunny out, I'm going to hit only the shady sides of the dock. I'm not going to worry about the sunny side, because those fish are looking out towards the shady side. They're not going to be looking behind them towards the sun, because they're looking at where they're most likely to ambush. And it's easier for them to ambush where the trout swimming by can't see them, and that's on the shady side. So in terms, an eraser. So when it comes to docks, this is where angles become really important. So just a basic dock. My first cast, if I'm coming down the shoreline, it's going to be a little bit different. If I'm coming down the shoreline, my first cast is going to be towards the deepest part. I'm going to try to parallel this side first. The philosophy behind that is if the fish are shallow and you make your first cast up there, you're just going to spook them deep. If the fish are sitting on the edge of this dock, especially in springtime, I've noticed 2 things. The fish are either on the shallowest part of the dock or they're off the edge. They're never really in the middle. So my first cast is going to be right along the face of the dock, and that's normally, if the fish are on the edge, they'll come out and eat it. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go up and come around, because basically if you throw over here, you haven't spooked any of the fish that are under the dock first. You still have all this water here that's been untouched. Then I'm going to come in and I'm going to slowly just kind of, especially this is where it gets a little dicey with skipping with a HUD, is the weedless is a lot more friendly for this because it doesn't have an exposed hook. Skipping under docks with a HUD, well, it can be very rewarding, can be very, as you know, you've hung up a HUD, it's a nerve-wracking moment, especially when it's way up under. You know, that's one thing is, when I approach a dock, I'm going to get down and I'm going to look under the dock and see if there's any cross beams, cross braces, not only for either me to get hung up on, or what if I hook a fish, I need to know where that fish is going to go for it to break me off. So I'm going to skip under the dock and slowly move shallow. Either that, if the dock is skippable, I'm going to skip under the dock because then you basically cover the whole ambush zone. If the dock isn't skippable, whether it be there's high water or anything like that, I'm going to fish just the sides. I'm going to cast as shallow as I can, and you want to get that basically to the point where, you know, you're bringing it as close to the dock as possible. So I mean, if this was a dock, I'd want it, you know, right there, you know, as close to the dock as I can get, because it's the less that fish has to travel, especially with largemouth. Largemouth are lazy. They're basically looking for the easiest meal they can find. I mean, they can chase down prey, but they'd much rather just come right in front of their face. If you can get it as close to the dock as possible, and sometimes, you know, it's multiple casts, and there's days where you'll get one to follow it out. Remember where that fish followed it out, because 9 times out of 10, if you come from a different angle, that fish is still going to eat because he's curious about what that bait was. You know, a Rossiger, I had one fish under a dock. Every cast, he came out and looked at it. He didn't eat it, but every cast, he came out and looked at it. Granted, no fish ate it that day, but the point is that the fish that are falling out, they're falling it out because they want to eat it. It's curious to them. It looks like a rainbow. They're like, all right, you know, let's consider eating that. And then a lot of times, what you can do, either that or you catch a fish off the face of this dock. There's some docks I've noticed in the spring, on Sawyer especially, that load up. And by load up, I mean that there's not just one fish under it. You'll catch one, and when you're reeling in that one, you'll have 4 or 5 more chasing him around. Normally that happens around spawning areas, spawning bays. So you come from one angle, hit it from one angle, the fish follows it out. You can always come around. This is especially early morning before you get the shade lines and all that stuff. Early morning, go under from a different angle. A lot of times, the angles, if you change angles throughout the day, those fish are more likely to eat. That goes with any bait. You know, if you get a fish that, you miss a fish coming one way with a jig or something, come back from the other side and skip through the other side. The fish hasn't seen it from that way. Let's see, what else? Wake baits. It's not really a swim bait, but it's another big bait that gets big bites. This is a 7.5-inch bait. And it's a floating bait that basically you can walk the dog with, like a spook, on a slow wake. It just basically creaks along. And I've had, believe it or not, 2-pound smallmouth come up and eat this. I mean, smallmouth especially, you know, anytime you have treble hooks, you're likely to stick one. But smallmouth especially are a very aggressive fish. They're always trying to eat baits that normally they wouldn't be able to fit in their mouth, but somehow still cram one in. You know, with the T-dub swimmer, it's a bait that's perfectly their size. But like I said, there's been plenty of times where that 68. I mean, I think almost all the fish I've caught this year on this has been smallmouth. I've caught a couple largemouth, but mainly have been smallmouth. And 3-pound smallmouth can eat this no problem. I've had 1-pound, 12-inch largemouth eat this bait. It's a bait that fish of all sizes are interested in it. I've had perch follow the thing, probably because it looks more like them. But the thing with the HUD, the bite is the most exhilarating part. That's my favorite part of all. I could care less about landing the fish, just getting the bite, because it's one of those baits you throw, make a long cast, you're slow rolling it next to a dock, and all of a sudden you just get slammed. And when you swing, you don't know if that fish is 1 pound or 10 pound. When you're throwing a bait like this, the sky's the limit. A lot of times either the fish is going to eat it to the point where right when you set it, you got them, or like I said, you can miss the fish and keep a slow retrieve, and that fish can come back again. The one thing I will say, and this is where a good pair of polarized glasses is really helpful, is there's times where you'll get follows, and you can kind of almost tease the fish into eating it. So, you know, you'll have a largemouth coming up behind it, and all of a sudden you see him, you know, he'll come out from under a dock, and he'll start to, you know, come right up on it. I like to burn it, look like it's trying to flee, and then basically kill it. And with the ROF5, it'll kind of just slowly fall. Now, 9 times out of 10, that largemouth will come up real close to it, and I'll pop it, and the bait will flutter, and I'll come up and cream it. I lost an 8-pounder doing that this year, just because I set the hook too early. But that's one thing. And when you do get follows, you may look, you know, like an idiot when you're doing it. But if you see a fish fall in the boat, I suggest creeping down, because the shorter you get, the more, you know, positive feedback that fish gets. He doesn't know that you're there. He's focused on that bait. And if you get down where you can still see in the water, because these baits, this bait normally under the surface when I'm retrieving, it's only, you know, 1 to 2 feet, so it's pretty high up there. That if the fish is coming right behind it hot, he'll be able to see you up in there, especially if you're wearing, you know, light blue colors like this, or if you're not blending into the sky.
Bright yellow rain pins.
Exactly. my ring
You've
pants.
seen them?
If
You can tell where Austin lives on that lake from a mile away.
The fish know you're coming from a mile away. So, you know, getting down low can really help. A lot of guys, you know, favor the smaller baits just because it's more conventional. It's easier to throw on smaller tackle. They still catch fish. These little bass trick swim baits catch quite a few big fish. I've caught, you know, a couple 4 or 5 pounders on this. Basically, you take an owner beast lock screw hook, which has just got a centering pin screw, and it's weight molded onto the hook. And I slit the belly in this one, so it was an easier way. You basically screw them on, put the hook through there, and now you basically have a weedless swim bait. Where that fish, you know, it's weighted, so it's going to, you know, stay upright. That coming through the water still, it's a smaller profile. Sometimes it's also good to key in on how big the trout are in the lake that the fish are eating. When they first get planted, you know, you have the 6 to 8 inch rainbows. That's when I like that 6-inch HUD, because it's an easier bait for them to eat. The 8-inch is, you know, unless they're really committed or you got a really big fish, and that's, you know, sometimes where that treble hook can come in handy. But for the most part, I really like throwing the 6-inch, obviously, that it's just been beaten to heck. And it's one of those baits that you've got to stick with it.